And here we go. Maybe I'll just chant the prayers of the Lord and sing a day tonight, because we all need protection. All right. Whoops. Let me just end that program. And this program is good. Okay. We're ready to go. Uh-oh. It's out of tune. There we go. Okay. Namaste, gotta shringaya. Namaste, gotta shringaya. La la la, dayune, la la la, dayune. Iranya kashi, urmakshaha, jilatamka, kolaye, jilatamka. Sing about it, sing, oh, you told sing, I hear the sing, oh, the sing, oh, the sing of a dream, you're an umbrella joy, the sing of a dream, an umbrella joy. You told us sing about it, told us sing, oh, you told us sing, I hear the sing, told us sing, oh, sing of a tip, umbrella joy, the sing of a tip, umbrella joy. My love, there ain't a come up with the sing. Dalita, Rani Kasibu, Dano, bring Isabatrita, Alani Rupa, Daddy Salate, Daddy Salate. Never gonna come and love the rain. Never come and put this string on the home. Da-di-da, Irania Kasibu, Dano, ring on the home. Isamadrita, Alhani Rupa, Daddy Salate. sing a day, sing a day, sing a day, Brian, sing a day, sing a day, Brian, sing a day, sing a day, Brian, sing a day. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jai Om Vishnupad, Paramahamsa Paramahansa all Siddhi Shimad, His Divine Grace Savaya Chalananda Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Radhakrishna Gopi Gopinath Sai Makunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavanam Ki Jai, Maturdam Ki Jai, Jagannath Swami Ki Jai, Munamai Ki Jai, Srimati Lassi Devi Ki Jai, Samveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschacha Dejatarni Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So, we're going to continue with our study of the Bhajan Rahasya by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and this Bhajan Rahasya deals with the different stages of devotional service, beginning with faith, then associating with devotees, performing the activities, Bhajana Kriya, the activities of devotional service, getting rid of your anarthas, and then becoming stable and steady in Krishna consciousness, and then getting ruchi, a taste for Krishna consciousness, then getting a shakti, which means complete absorption in Krishna and detachment from the material world, and then after that you get bhava, emotions, spiritual emotions, and after that you get prema. How about that? And so it deals with these 8 different steps in the progress of devotional service. Corresponding them, again, I know this is reiterated what we talked about before, corresponding each of those different steps with a different verse in the Shikshashtaka. Shikshashtaka, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's 8 prayers, and also corresponding each and every verse in the Shikshashtaka and every stage of devotional service with the different times in Krishna's day. Krishna's Ashta Kaliya Lila means eightfold pastimes in which he does different things at different times of the day. God is very variegated in his activities. So he has a morning, mid-morning, forenoon, noon, afternoon, evening, night, like that. So his pastimes are divided into these different segments, and great devotees, they meditate on each one of these particular segments of the day. And also in Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur's writings, we find each and every one of these eightfold pastimes, each and every one of the Shikshashika verses, each and every one of the stages of advancement, not only they correspond with what I just mentioned, but they correspond with a different pair of names in the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, the first pair. Got it? Pair means two. Hare Krishna, another second pair. Krishna Krishna, third pair. Hari Hari, fourth pair. And then Hari Rama, fifth pair. Hari Rama, sixth pair. Rama Rama, seventh pair. And Hari Hari, that's the eighth pair. Got it? So anyway, Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur gives a very similar exposition upon these different factors, but also adds the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra as corresponding to the different stages in Krishna's day, different stages of advancement, and different verses in the Shikshashika. All right, so with that brief introduction, let's go on. We're in chapter 4 of the Bhajan Rahasya by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Chapter 4 deals with the stage of ruchi. For those of you who don't know what ruchi means, it means having a taste. Not a taste for different types of food, but a taste for Krishna consciousness, a taste for the holy name, and everything connected to Krishna. Not just an ordinary taste. Yeah, I like Krishna. But it's an extreme taste that you don't have a taste for basically anything else. Whenever you try to think of Maya, your mind goes towards Krishna. Now, right now, for most of you, whenever you try to think of Krishna, your mind goes to Maya. But for one who has a taste, even if they try to think of some illusory thing, then their mind just goes to Krishna automatically. So, if you're not at that stage, don't meditate on the Astakaliya Leela. You can hear about it, but don't think that you can do that sort of internal meditation. If you're not at the stage of your mind automatically going to Krishna when someone talks to you about a cricket game, for those of you from India, or talks to you about, in America, what would it be, a football, baseball game, or a soccer game, or a rugby game, or some stupid thing, sorry, like that. So, on that happy note, let's go, after that brief introduction. So, Om Gana Timidanda Shah Galanjana Shlakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shigurave Namaha. I am going to share the screen. Here we go. And there is the screen. Let me just get this set up so I can see some other screens at the same time. So on page 50, and actually there's only 90 pages in the Bhajan Rahasya. So we're pretty much along and it'll be finished pretty quickly. So, okay. These are different quotes that elaborate on this particular aspect of devotional service, which is ruchi. So here we have a quote from the Bhagavatam. Tatapinaham pravinormi bhuman bhavatpadam boja nishevanot sukha. What among the four goals of artha, that's economic development, dharma, mundane religiosity, kama, enjoyment or lust, and moksha, liberation, is difficult to achieve for one who worships your lotus feet? O Lord, I therefore do not accept these things, since I am enthusiastically engaged in serving your lotus feet. So sometimes the devotee will get all these things, or Krishna will offer all these things, and the devotee doesn't want them because he or she feels that they will be impediments. You know, a lot of money, all these different rituals. Actually, it's interesting that, especially where I do some of my preaching in India, Fiji, amongst people from India, basically, they have all these different rituals that they do. So many different rituals. I mean, there's one that's called Pita Paksh, which is like 2 weeks when you're supposed to like pay respects or worship the forefathers. And I remember there was one devotee who I was supposed to give initiation to. Fortunately, I don't have to give this person initiation, thank God. But I was supposed to, and every time that I would come to the place where this person was, it happened to be Pita Paksh. So therefore, the person couldn't take initiation. Unfortunately, this person changed her mind. Her or his mind. Anyway, thank God for that. So people get into all these different things. I mean, even today I was just talking to someone and they saw a mirror in my house and they said, don't you understand? A round mirror is inauspicious. Well, thanks for telling me that. So people have all these different rituals and superstitions and everything like that. You spend your whole life with these things. Okay. One should strive for pure bhakti. There's a famous verse in the Bhagavatam. Tashaya hito prayatita kovido nalabhyate yad brahmatam uparyada talabhyate dukavad anita sukam kalena sarvatra gabira ranghasa. The wise man strives for that happiness which is not attained by jivas wandering from Brahmaloka to the lowest species. Material happiness is attained in all cases without endeavor, by the law of karma, just like distress, through the force of fast-moving time. So in other words, time and tide wait for no one. So anyway, let me put the microphone towards me a little bit more. So we have this, let me just make sure it's working. Whoops. Hare Krishna, yeah, it's working. So everything's preordained as far as our material happiness, material distress. But your Krishna conscious happiness is not preordained. You can choose to get it. But just like if you are born in this world, there's a certain number of breaths you get. So don't breathe too quickly, or else you could keel over and croak. So desire for liberation becomes insignificant in pure bhakti. Another famous verse from the Bhagavatam. Ya nivritishtanu vritam tabapada padma janad bhavajana kata shavanena na vashat sa brahmani swa mahimanyapi natama bhut kim twant kashi litat patatam vimanat. The bliss for your servant available from meditating on your lotus feet or from hearing about your pastimes from the devotees is not available in your form of greatness known as Brahman. What to speak of the happiness for those who fall from the pleasures of Swarga. Swarga means the heavenly planets. In other words, just by being a servant of Krishna is inconceivably greater than any other happiness, including Brahman happiness or the happiness of the heavenly planets. So that's called a ruchi. So one has that ruchi, nama ruchi. That's one of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's main teachings. Vaishnava Seva Nama Ruchi and Jivadoya. Wow. So we're meant to have this Nama Ruchi, so much so that we can't stop chanting. See, we hear about these devotees like Haridas Thakur, who would chant, some people say, wow, 192 rounds a day, or 3 lakhs approximately the same thing. And you're thinking, how? They just force themselves? Like, I'm forcing myself to chant? No. They didn't want to stop. They asked for millions of mouths and tongues, and they weren't satisfied just chanting 192 rounds or whatever they did. Another verse from the Bhagavatam about the attraction. Nakamaye nata tad abhyaham kvachin nayatrak yushmat sharanam bujashava mahataman tar vidyan mukha chuto vidatsva karna yutam eshamevara. I do not desire anything, and especially I do not want liberation, in which there is no nectar of your lotus feet coming from the hearts of great devotees and falling from their mouths. Give me millions of ears. That is my request. Extreme ruchi. Bhagavatam 4:20-24. So, of course, there's also that description in the Bhagavatam, in the Bhagavatam, that the saffron dust particles from the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are in the sound vibration coming from a pure devotee like His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. For a devotee, any planet in the material world and all yoga siddhi means like powerful things, like making yourself bigger than the biggest, smaller than the smallest, able to fly in the air, able to reach out anywhere and get anything you want. And all these are insignificant for a devotee. Nayakapishtam, Nacha Parameshjam, Nasarabhomam, Na Rasaryukatyam, Nayogasiddhir Apunar Bhavamba, Samanjasa Twa Virachaya Kankshe. O my Lord, source of all opportunities, I do not desire to enjoy in Dhruvaloka, the heavenly planets, or on the planet where Lord Brahma resides. Nor do I want to be the supreme ruler of all the earthly planets or the lower planetary systems. I do not desire to be master of the powers of mystic yoga, nor do I want liberation. Burning in separation from you, these things will not satisfy me. Yayatma suprasidate savai pumsam parodharma yato bhakya hoksajay Ahoitakiya pratyata yatma supasidate. That this topmost dharma, savai pumsam parodharma, yato bhakti hoksajay, is performed in devotional service in relationship with Hoksajay, who is Krishna. Ahoitakiya pratyata, and it's unmotivated and unstoppable, undeterred, and therefore yatma suprasidate, it satisfies the self. Majita magata prana bodhyantas ja parasparam katyantas shamam nityam dushanti cha ramanti cha. Of course, that's 8-9 in the Bhagavad Gita. Oh, 10-9, sorry. I got that wrong. 10-9 in Bhagavad Gita, which is Vachita Magata, my devotees. They're always talking about me. Bodhyantas cha parasparam katyantas shamam nisham. And in this way, tushanti cha ramanti cha, they are actually satisfied and happy. Symptoms of developing sakti by taking shelter in the name is described, and of course that's the next platform. See, we're getting to the end of the chapter, not quite. Chitam sukhena bhava tapa vritam graheshu yan nirvashatyuta karavapi guriya kutye padopadam na chalatastavapada mulam yamakatam brajamato karavama kim va. Until today, our minds were absorbed in household affairs, but you easily stole our minds and our hands away from our housework. Now our feet won't move one step from your lotus feet. How can we go back to Braj? What would we do there? These are the gopis, of course, speaking. You know, they're just like attracted to Krishna. And if they go back to Braj, they won't be able to relate to anything. They'd be like in a trance. And of course, ultimately, they do go back. Because as Prabhupada said, when someone is engaged in sort of that romantic affair, they have to act perfectly as to not arouse suspicion. And actually, that also refers to devotees in this world. Oftentimes people ask me the question, all right, they say, I have to work to maintain my family. Should I just like coast and just like do the minimum? And no, I explain. First of all, you are representing Krishna. So even in material affairs, you should be the best that you can be. That's really important because your activities or how you act will reflect upon the Krishna conscious movement and Krishna consciousness in general. So in other words, there's this saying, be the best version of yourself. Some of you may have heard that. And so I use the example of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was the best magistrate. Never took any bribes. Never was lazy. He was able to accomplish more than any other judge and did it very efficiently and effectively. And at the same time, he was the best devotee. So a devotee should be good in his material, or even, let's not even use the material, but in his responsibilities within this world, as well as his transcendental responsibilities. If a devotee goes to the university, they should get the best marks that they could possibly get. Why not? If a devotee goes into business, they should make the most money that they can possibly make. That's really important. So in other words, one has to act like the gopis, like Raghunath Das Goswami acted, as to not arouse suspicion that they're not into it, into the material responsibilities. And actually, probably even said one time, I think was joking, that in household life, one has to be detached from the wife, or from the husband, but act like you are attached to keep peace in the family. It's a really balancing act. Wow. It's not that you're lying because you can actually love someone because they are part and parcel of Krishna. Just don't say that. If someone says, do you love me? Don't say, I love all parts and parcels of Krishna, and you are a part and parcel of Krishna, therefore I love you. That will not work. You have to say yes and leave out the other philosophical points. In this condition, that's funny. In this condition, all good qualities and peace appear in the devotee. Here's another famous verse. Yashasti bhakti ragavacha kinjana savargunas tatra samasate sura arava bhaktasya kato mahadgana manamrite nasati davato bahi. The devatas constantly dwell with all good qualities in that person who has spirit of bhakti for the Lord. There are no good qualities in the non-devotee who chases after temporary material objects with desire for material pleasure. A little bit different than the translation that we have in Prabhupada's Bhagavatam. Prabhupada's Bhagavatam paraphrasing is one who has unflinching devotion to the Supreme Personality of God, that all the good qualities are manifest, and someone who doesn't have devotion, or is not a bhakta, then all of these so-called good qualities are simply manoretain asati, simply on the mental plane. So how do we say, why do we say that? I mean, we see so many people in this world with good qualities. How can we say they don't have any good qualities? I mean, it's a contradiction. Someone may be kind, someone may be charitable, someone may be peaceful. That's a good quality, Prabhu. Someone, what? So many things. Someone may do or be. The reason we say that is because their qualities, whether good or bad, are coming from guna sangha. Guna sangha means the association of the modes of nature. So the problem with the association of the modes of nature, according to Krishna and Bhagavad Gita, is sometimes the mode of goodness becomes prominent, defeating the mode of passion and ignorance, and sometimes the mode of ignorance becomes prominent, defeating the mode of goodness and passion, and you get the idea. It's not stable. It's like a roller coaster. You may stay in one prominent mode for a year or 2 or 3, if you are lucky, or even longer possibly, but then ultimately after some time, woo, you bite the proverbial modal dust. In this way, through bhakti, false ego with bodily identification is destroyed. Tvam prachagadmani tada bhavatjananta anandamatra upapana samastu shaktau bhaktim vidaya paramam shanakara vidya grantim vivechasi mamahamiti prarudam. When you were 5 years old, by performing pure devotion to the Lord, who is the soul within, unlimited, full of bliss, and endowed with all energies, you gradually cut the strong knot of ignorance concerning I and mine. So in other words, it's interesting, to cut ignorance, the solution is pure devotion. You cannot cut it by yourself. Daivi yesha gunamai mama maya turachya mama eva ye prapadnate nayamitam taranti. Krishna's energy is impossible to overcome, but one who has bhakti for Krishna can easily cross beyond it. So another verse, Yat pada pankaja palasa vilasa bhaktya karmasya grantitam ugrantayanti santa tadvan rikta matayo yatayo pivruda shroto ganastam aranam bhaja Vasudevam. Worship Vasudev, the shelter by devotion to his lotus toes, possessing ever-increasing beauty, lotus toes. The devotees untie the knot of false ego filled with impressions of karma, which the foolish sannyasis who try to stop the senses flowing like a river cannot untie. In other words, all we have to do is meditate on Krishna's beauty. Any aspect of his body is transcendental. So in this way, all the samskaras, you notice this thing here? Impressions of karma, these are samskaras. And the foolish sannyasis who are, that doesn't mean all sannyasis are foolish, myself accepted. The foolish sannyasis who are not devotees, they simply try to stop the senses and artificially repress everything. But they cannot stop the senses. They flow like you can't stop the flowing of a river. It's impossible. So, now we get to the noon pastimes. So noon pastimes are generally pastimes of Radha Kundan. Let's see what it's described here. Bhajanin yunya sangurita vivida vikari pusha pramugda vamyo kantan lola maramha kalilita jali dhanapta shata dola ranyambu vamsi rati rati marupan arka pujadi lilao Radha Krishna sastrishna Varijana gataya sevyamano smarami. I remember Radha and Krishna were served by their associates during their midday pastimes, who are ornamented with ecstatic symptoms from their interactions, who obtain joy from the joking words of the sakhis, that means the friends, the girlfriends, who become agitated from longing and reverses, who become engaged in swinging, playing in the forest, frolicking in the water, stealing the flute, amorous pastimes, drinking liquor, and worshiping the sun. Of course, the liquor that they drink is like honey wine. And there's some stories about when Krishna and the gopis are drinking honey wine, sometimes they became so intoxicated they pour the wine into the wrong end of the glass. I don't know if anyone's here ever seen a wine glass. Sometimes the wine glass, it's really hard to distinguish which side you're supposed to pour the water into. So in that way, the wine got all over the place. But is everything in the spiritual world? There's intoxication. There's loving exchanges. I mean, why or how could we have things here unless they were there originally in the spiritual world? How could you have things in the reflection if they weren't there in the actual source of the reflection? So now we go to the next time of the day, which is also the next platform of devotional service, which is also the next verse in the Shikshashtaka. So this is Bhajan in the afternoon called Panchama Yama Sadhana. And this represents Krishna Sakti, which means complete attachment to Krishna. I am completely attached, Krishna Sakti, and completely detached from everything else. It's just like, what do they call it? In America, of course, we have this thing called Gorilla Glue. That once you put Gorilla Glue on something, you can't really separate it anymore. Whew. So it's 3.5 praharas. This is a time measurement of day till evening. And of course, the next verse of the Shikshashtaka, which is the 5th verse of the Shikshashtaka. Ainandan ananda tonija kinkaram patitam mam vishame bhavam buddha kripaya tavapada pankaja stita duli sadrasam vachintya. O Krishna, son of Nanda, I am your eternal servant, but I have fallen into this dreadful ocean of material existence. See, that's actually, it has to be there, dreadful ocean. Nowadays, when people cite this verse, they don't say dreadful or horrible ocean. They just said the ocean of material existence. But it's actually dreadful or horrible, which same thing. Please be merciful and think of me as a speck of dust at your lotus feet. And of course, the translation we're familiar with, place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. So, very, very similar. It's not a different meaning, but it's a slightly variation. By chanting without offense and with Krishna's mercy, gradually bhava manifests. So bhava, of course, is the next step, and that's via asakti. In other words, you don't get bhava until you have complete attachment to Krishna. Right? So what are you experiencing right now if it ain't bhava? You're experiencing, yes, emotions. Hopefully, if you're in Krishna consciousness, you're experiencing some bhava, but you're not at the stage of bhava. Bhava means emotions. Generally, most of us are experiencing bhava rog, that means material emotions. And sometimes we project these material emotions upon our experience in Krishna consciousness. Like we may think a kirtan is ecstatic because it's just, it's very quick and loud. We just like to jive, boom, 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 boom. Or we may think a kirtan is ecstatic because, the musical accompaniment is very nice. But, we can't really distinguish. So we do get some spiritual emotions. Like was mentioned in the chat window, we get some shadow attachment, we get some coming attractions. People ask this question all the time. Why, when I first joined the movement, was I so ecstatic, and now it's so hard for me to chant the holy names? Before it was like Oreo cookies coming out, or coming into my mouth. Of course, probably you don't know what an Oreo cookie is. So now it's like, oh my God, like going to the dentist. So, because Krishna does give you a coming attraction, and we have good association, you can get a little bit of a taste, but we're not at the platform of bhava. To be at the platform of bhava, you have to be disinterested and completely attached to Krishna. Krishna is mine. Krishna say tamar. Krishna dite par. Like we say about the pure devotee. Krishna is yours. You have the power to give him. I'm simply running behind you, shouting, Krishna, Krishna. Now another nice verse in the Bhagavatam. Srimata swakata Krishna punya shavana kirtana vidyantak sto yavadrani virunoti suritsatam nasta parayeshu abhadreshu nicham bhagavata sevaya bhagavatyutama shloke bhaktir bhavati naisiki tada rajas tamo bhava kama lobhayas tachaye chitai tarana vidam siddham tatvai prasiddhati. So this is very similar to the translation we're familiar with. Krishna, who purifies through the process of hearing and chanting, who is the benefactor of the devotees, who hears about, enters the hearts of the devotee and destroys their sins. So in other words, Riyantaksto, that means Krishna's in the heart. He'll destroy all of our sins because he's our well-wisher, Surit. In other words, here it's translated as benefactor of the devotees. As the impediments to bhakti become generally destroyed by the constant service to the devotees, we also translate by regular devotional service to the Supreme Personality God. In other words, you destroy these things. Generally destroyed by constant service to the devotees. In Bhagavatam, the stage of Nishtata Bhakti Bhagavan, who is praised by the greatest sages, becomes established. And that's the Pradesha. But Nityam Bhagava, always serving the devotees. Bhagavata Uttama Shloke. Bhakti Bhavati Naishtaki. Actually, with Naishtaki Bhakti. Tada Rajas, in other words, then you become free of the modes of material nature and hankering or lust. And one becomes situated in transcendental Vishuddha Sattva. How does it translate it here? It's praised by the greatest sage becomes established. The mind becomes unaffected by lust, greed, anger, illusion, and illusion which arise from Rajas and Tamas, that means passion and ignorance. Then the mind becomes fixed in the form of the Lord at the stage of Ashakti and becomes satisfied. That's Bhagavatam, obviously, first canto, second chapter, text 17 to 19. These are very famous verses. And here's another famous verse that we often cite. One should pray for mercy, in other words, to attain Ashakti. We pray for mercy in this way. Tatena kampam susamikshimano punjana ivatma kratam vipakam ridvag vapurvir vidadam namaste jiveta yo mukti pude siddhaya bhak. My dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds, and offering you respectful obeisances with his heart, words, and body. Body, mind, and words. Anyways, a little bit different than the Bhagavatam translation we're used to. Is surely eligible for liberation because it has become his rightful claim or rightful inheritance. So in other words, Prabhupada would quote this verse quite often, that if we go on serving Krishna, regardless of the circumstances, and don't get angry with Krishna for whatever is happening, and you go on not only with your body, but your heart, your mind, and your words. It's one thing to serve Krishna with the body, karma yoga, but it's another thing to serve Krishna with your heart. That is pure devotional service. You have to do what Krishna wants, not only that, but do it happily, gladly, with a sense of devotion. And that is Asakti. That's how you achieve Asakti, complete attachment to Krishna. The attainment in this condition is described. Itya chutang grim bhajato nuvritya bhaktir virakti bhagavat prito bodha Bhavanti vai bhagavatasya rajan tata param santi mupaiti sakshat. Okay, the devotee who worships the lotus feet of the infallible Lord with constant endeavor achieves unflinching devotion, detachment, and experience of the Lord. Wow. In other words, we don't stop. Haitaki apretiyata. Haitaki means no material cause. Apretiyata means cannot be stopped under any circumstances. What's ever happening with the mind, whatever is happening with the body, what's ever happening with the people around you, you just keep serving Krishna. It's like a tank that just keeps rolling, and rolls over everything in its path. 9 types of bhakti are described, of course. Another famous verse from the Bhagavatam in the 7th canto. Right? Shravanam kirtanam Vishnu smaranam parasevanam marjanam mandanam dasham satyam atmanivedam iti pushpam sarpita vishvam bhaktir chen avalakshana kriyeta bhagavat yada tanmanye di tamutamam. If any of the 9 processes of bhakti, hearing, chanting, remembering, menial service, deity worship, offering prayers, servitude, friendship, and offering body and soul, is performed for the Lord by any human without prerequisites, that's a haituki, no material cause, which have been offered to Krishna, that should be considered the highest learning. Prerequisites means no material motives, okay? Or no desire for liberation. You're just doing it because you're trying to offer it. You can only offer and have something accepted if you have devotion. Yad karoshi yadashnashi, yad jahoshi dadasi yad yad pashashi kontiya, tat kurashwa madarpanam. With the approach of bhava, because we're approaching bhava, a natural dasha rati arises. In other words, one has not come to the point yet of, I'm a gopi. No. Dasha rati, that I am Krishna's servant. That's really, if that concept is not thoroughly ingrained into your little consciousness, then you're never going to progress in devotional service. I am a servant. Gopi Bharta Padakamala Dasa Dasa Dasana Dasa. And remember, we're talking about with the approach of bhava. It's a very high stage. We're in a sakti, but a sakti is the preliminary stage before bhava. Complete attachment to Krishna is the preliminary stage before you reach this stage of complete absorption in devotional mellows. Aham hari tava padaikamula dasanu daso bhavitasmi bhuya manasmarai tasu padeo gulamste gunitava karma kavotukaya. O Lord, I shall become the servant of servants whose only shelter is your lotus feet. May my mind remember the Lord of my life. May my words chant your glories, and may my body serve you. This is actually what you have to come to this realization before you can actually progress, especially to the stage of a sakti, especially to even more so to bhava. O Lord, I shall become the servant. I read that already. By nature, the jiva is to be enjoyed. Remember that. And Krishna is the enjoyer. Thus, by worship, the desire to be the servant of Radha who is full of bliss becomes prominent. Then one's bhava as a gopi arises. And then, and only then, Prabhu. Okay, so now we're going to take questions. And we left off on this page, which is 57. All right. Let's start to take questions. Let's unmute. Stop sharing. mute. So we had some questions from someone. So since the devotee Gurudev loves Krishna's pardon, does that mean that he loves all the disciples, even those that sleep? Yes, we love everybody, but we reciprocate differently. Like Krishna loves everybody. He reciprocates differently, that's all. It's not that we hate someone. We, as they say in Christianity, you hate the sin, not the sinner. So Prabhupada loved everyone equally. And of course, sometimes that love was tough love. Sometimes the love was expressed in different ways. But it was love, and Prabhupada did the best thing for everybody. That's love. Sometimes the best love is you chastise someone and say, hit the road, Jack. Of course, you never say, don't you go back no more. That wouldn't be such a nice thing to say. So love manifests in different ways. So anyway, let's go back to our list of people. So now it's time to ask questions. You can raise your hand by going to the reaction heart at the bottom of the screen and raise your electronic hand. I'm not saying that you're a robot, but you have an electronic hand within Zoom. If you go to react at the bottom of the screen, or if you're on your phone, you can figure out how to do it. Raise your hand, and then we can allow you to unmute and ask a question, or you can type in the text window. Okay, we got Sarva City. You are now, allowed to unmute.
Hare Krishna Gurudev.
Hare Krishna, good to hear from you. What's up? You have a question?
Yes, Gurudev. Gurudev, would it be fair to assume that there is some sort of a pressure or an expectation on devotees to perform materially well? Because I was listening to the part where you said, we are representing Krishna. So in material affairs as well, we need to be the best that we can. So some
Yeah.
devotees might feel some sort of a pressure saying, oh, I can't do this because it's too much. I don't want to do this. So, I mean, I'm talking about the material parts, like a job or anything.
Well, I mean, why do they have a job then? I mean, what if you're just miserable at your job and you don't want to do it? That's not good. I mean, whatever you do, because if you do it for Krishna, if you're just looking at your job as something to satisfy yourself, yeah, then you can be miserable at it. I oftentimes give the example of a bank teller who works behind the teller window in the bank, and all day long she's just counting other people's money. And it's a pretty, if I say you should do that, it's a pretty miserable thing. I mean, it's like being in jail all day long in a little tiny cupola. So, but she's happy. Why? Because she looks at the picture of her dear children, not the husband, but she looks at the husband, she couldn't care less about. But she looks at the picture of the children who she really loves, and she just gets energy. And she does a good job because she understands she's doing it for her family, to maintain her family. Why is she working that job? Because little Johnny or little whatever, she wants to send him to the best possible college. So I'm not saying they all have to go to the best college, but because she's doing it out of a sense of devotion, even something that would otherwise be miserable, she wouldn't want to do well, she'd want to just skate by. She does it well because she's working for free. She doesn't want to lose her job either. So we should be the same. And also we're representing Krishna. We're representing Krishna. And the interesting thing is, if you think of Krishna, even if you have a menial job, then if you think of Krishna and think of what you're doing and who you're doing it for, it becomes blissful. I remember when I joined the movement, I mean, this of course wasn't an outside job, I had to clean the pots and clean the toilet and everything like that. And I just naturally thought it was for Krishna because I would never do it for anyone else. No matter how hard my mother tried, I would never do those things in our house before. But because it was for Krishna, it was very pleasant. But doing those things by themselves was not pleasant. So one has to be able to connect whatever you're doing for Krishna and see yourself as representing Krishna or Krishna consciousness or representing Prabhupada or representing your spiritual master. Okay?
Because some devotees they often think that okay, I am doing this because I'm also donating for Krishna's services, like for the temples and whatnot. So that could be a driving factor as well. But
Yeah.
that,
Oh, of course. Not only one's family. I'm not such a griha matey that I
no,
would
no,
say that you'd say you have to do it only for your family. But obviously one should be giving some portion to Krishna, to the spreading of Krishna consciousness movement, and one should want to work nicely. And if you work nicely, you'll get a raise or you'll get a promotion, and then you'll make more money. You'll be able to give more money to Krishna. But you should do everything with a sense of devotion to Krishna, even if it happens to be the most menial activity. As long as you're giving the results to Krishna, that thing you're doing, and actually Krishna appreciates the person who does the most menial thing more than the person who takes just like a big, big position in profit adoration distinction, like Hanuman and the spider.
yes,
Lord Ram was very much appreciating the spider was giving 100%. Hanuman was also giving 100%. But the spider was giving 100%, so Krishna sees that. So we have to think Krishna's watching us at every moment. He's seeing how much we're giving to him. Okay?
yeah,
All right. All right. Next victim. I'm sorry. Next person. Anybody else have a question? If not, we can end because it's actually almost time. All right. It's nice to see everybody. We had quite a few people, almost 30 people for class today. Oh, Aruna. Okay. You can unmute. Let's see. I'm allowing you to unmute. Okay.
Yeah.
Any
Hare Krishna
question?
Gurudev. Yes, yes, yes. Hare Krishna Gurudev. Dandavat Pranam. Jai Srila
Oh,
Prabhupada. This is Arundhati Prayasi. Sorry, I did not change my name. So, Gurudev,
I,
you are
uh,
saying that offer results to Krishna, do work sincerely, right? So, yes, like at the end of the day, we work sincerely and offer results. And when we get paycheck, we have some guidelines, right?
right.
50% to temples and 25%. So, that guidelines given by our Goswamis,
Yeah.
we
We
are
have to be
giving.
we have to be practical. It's not that everybody can give 50%. You have to take care of your family, and I mean, this is a practical world.
Okay. So that's my question. Yeah. What if somebody is not following the 50-25-25 rule?
I
Still, it
don't
is okay.
I don't know anybody who's following 50%.
Okay. Okay, Gurudev.
I don't know anybody. I mean, of course, a sannyasi, I'm trying to give like more than 50%. I think I am. But if someone's working on the outside, usually you have a family to maintain or whatever. Of course, we have devotees who work on the outside without families, like there was Jayananda Prabhu who was maintaining the family driving a taxi, but that's a unique circumstance. Okay, on that happy note, don't worry. We're going to end now. See you all tomorrow. All glories to His Mind, Grace,